Hello there, and welcome to Politics at Jack and Sam's Daily, the podcast that brings you a bite-sized guide, a sort of fun-sized Mars bar to the day ahead on the campaign trail.
Hello there, my name is Sam Coates of Sky News, and with me, as always, is Jack Blanchard of Politico. This is day 36, no less, of the campaign, and this time next week, polling booths all over the country will be open.
There is 1 week to go until the general election gets underway, and I, for one, cannot wait. I am sitting at home in southeast London, staring at Sam Coates' familiarly beige hotel room. Sam, you must have been at the debate last night. Tell us where you are.
I'm in a hotel on the edge of Nottingham, along with dozens of my colleagues, who I suspect are also, like me, all waking up completely dehydrated after one of the most sweltering nights I have spent, not because of the temperature in the debate, but because of the temperature in the spin room. I hope Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, who was touring the spin room, took note. But there was just sweat perspiring out of everybody, because it was the hottest 3 hours I have spent on the campaign trail so far.
I cannot think of anything less appetizing than 3 hours in a room full of sweaty journalists in a BBC spin room. My goodness, it must be time for this election to come to a close. Let's talk about the three big things that are happening today. The two party leaders, in fact, all the main party leaders are out back on the road, sort of making their final closing statements after last night's final debate. And we'll talk about those, and we'll talk about, of course, how the debate went on BBC One last night as well. We'll talk about junior doctor strikes, which are pretty much underway just as this podcast goes to air, something that Labour is going to have to deal with immediately if indeed they win the election next week. And we'll talk about something else that Keir Starmer might have to deal with, which is Donald Trump in the White House, because the first big US presidential debate happens tonight, well, at 2 a.m. on Friday morning, and that could overshadow this whole campaign tomorrow, so we'll talk about that as well.
It'll be good to see who does debates better. We'll be able to compare them side by side tomorrow morning. You're
right, we will. So yeah, let's talk about the two main party leaders. They're both back out on the road today. Keir Starmer is on Angela Rayner's bus today. They're driving around the Midlands and Staffordshire, talking to local papers and so on. He's also got an interview tonight on ITV with Paul Brand. We've seen some of the lines kicking around for that. That's on at 8:30 p.m. So there's plenty of Starmer around today.
And I'm duty bound to say he's also talking to Sophie Ridge, my colleague, on the Politics Hub this evening. So you'll have a Sky dose of Keir Starmer as well.
Oh, top scoop. Okay, thank you for that. Rishi Sunak is in Derbyshire, not far from you, Sam, in Nottinghamshire, where he'll be doing Q&A and some sort of pool clip. He'll be travelling with hacks around lunchtime as well. You're going to go and see him today, Sam?
I cannot confirm or deny whether or not I'll be taking part in the pool clip with the Prime Minister. Ooh. Those things are deeply operationally sensitive and cannot be discussed in advance.
I smell potential double Sky dose of Rishi Sunak today. Okay, so both party leaders trying to get back on the road anyway is the main thing they're doing. Lots of tours around the Midlands, which of course is where the debate was last night, trying to get their final campaign messages across in this final week. They're talking about policy that people have kind of feel like people aren't really engaging with policy that much anymore. It's the big campaign hammer messages that they're really trying to push home. And of course, we saw that on the debate last night on BBC One. Millions of people will have tuned in, although frankly, they should have been watching Portugal against Georgia because that was miles better. But nevertheless, the unwise ones were watching the debate. Sam, you were there. You were there in person. You saw it with your own eyes. What did you make of what we saw last night?
Well, I kind of thought that was the kind of performance that Rishi Sunak would have wanted to see, pretty much at the start of the whole election campaign. And I kind of thought last night across the 75 minutes, you could see why his campaign team were pushing for more of these head-to-heads and were disappointed that they only ended up getting two of them. This one was the second, because although the snap poll afterwards didn't suggest it, I have to say, for me, the night looked initially like it was a win for Rishi Sunak. He was the one who sort of entered that debate with a plan. And it was quite straightforward. What he wanted to do was he wanted to highlight areas of difference between him and Keir Starmer and highlight how, in his view, there wasn't a plan on the Labour side for certain sensitive areas like tax, like welfare reform, like what to do about women's rights, women's spaces, the EU, all of those areas. He was quite effective in sort of cornering Keir Starmer and pushing for more details, and when in some cases details didn't come, sort of suggesting your taxes will go up, you can't deport people back to Syria or Iran, and so the gangs will need a bigger boat, and I thought that over the course, in a sort of technical sense, Rishi Sunak came out really on top on its own terms. Then the Snap poll came out from YouGov, and that showed that people were pretty much even Stevens. There wasn't a winner. The result was 50-50. And then beyond that, what was clear was that, Rishi Sunak had picked these areas to push on. But actually, the public thought that Keir Starmer did better on welfare, for instance, as well as you would expect, perhaps on EU relations, but also on the economy. And it got me thinking, really, I suspect you were saying a moment ago, people aren't reading the detailed press releases about policy or listening to the sort of nuanced debate that the parties are sort of pumping out slightly performatively at the moment. Rishi Sunak wanted this election to be about the choice. In the end, I think it was a good strategy, but maybe it was just the wrong strategy, because in the end, it felt like what the audience and the audience at home might have been responding to was just this election has just been an overwhelming desire of the public to look for something new.
I think, a 50-50 result in one sense is pretty good for Rishi Sunak. If you just ask members of the public, how much do you like this guy versus how much do you like that guy? Every poll shows that at the moment Rishi Sunak is very, very unpopular and Keir Starmer's a bit meh. So actually, a 50-50 result is really overcome quite a big deficit for Rishi Sunak, and would suggest to me that he did indeed do better on the night. And I think the thing for Labour is, what would worry me is this isn't the first time this has happened. This is actually a very similar picture to what happened in the first ITV debate, if you can remember all the way back 4 weeks ago, whenever it was, when they first went head-to-head. We got a very similar outcome in a Snap poll, but the feeling was that was the first time we heard that £2,000 attack line from Rishi Sunak, and he hammered it home very well, regardless of whether or not you think it's true. It was landing, and Starmer looked very flat-footed, and I think, most people thought Starmer got bested again last night. It's not like Rishi Sunak's the world's greatest debater, right? It's not like this guy is like some insanely amazing debater, but he appears to be able to comfortably beat Keir Starmer twice now on live TV when the stakes are very high. And if you're Keir Starmer coming in as Prime Minister, that suggests to me you ain't very good at this, mate. And that could be a problem further down the line. I mean, maybe a small problem if you've got a 300-seat majority, but nevertheless, he's going to be going up against some Tory opposition leader at PMQs week after week as Prime Minister if he does win, and he doesn't appear to be too good at this. And once he finds himself in a sticky situation, as all Prime Ministers do very, very quickly, and he finds himself under pressure and he sees public support quickly ebbing away, things which always happen to Prime Ministers once they get into power, he's going to need some debating skills, and I'm not sure he's got them. He looks a bit flat-footed to me. He doesn't appear to be able to think as quickly on his feet or act aggressively when he needs to in these debates. And I think, as I say, it's not the biggest problem in the world, but it was pretty evident to me that he's not quite got it.
The backdrop of this election is apathy and a sense that the public, as was articulated in the debate last night, underwhelmed entirely by the choice on offer. For Keir Starmer, and for a Keir Starmer premiership to work, not only does he have to be a bit better at debating, but lots of things in the first 100 days, week, first year have to go incredibly well. So I think we should just talk for a moment about Labour's planning and what's coming down the track, because you wake up with a sort of jolt this morning to news that you really feel like in 8 days' time could be Labour's problem. Yesterday it was the sort of overflowing prisons, which is going to be one of the first things in the in-tray that's going to have to be dealt with almost within hours of a new administration, coming in, or the next government coming in. And today it was the beginning of, I think it's the 11th round of junior doctors' strikes, 5 days where these absolutely vital people who keep the NHS running are out on strike again. That is I am told, pretty much top of the list of things that potentially incoming Labour cabinet ministers are being told you are going to have to deal with, and deal with quick.
Yeah, and there's a long list of them, and we've talked about them before. I mean, as you say, the doctor strikes and the prisons ones are the most pressing, because the prisons are literally full and the NHS is literally falling over because it doesn't have the staff to treat all the people that need to. And then there's many, many more things coming down the track. You know, social care, I've talked about it before, but this is a huge crisis that has been put off by successive governments, and I'm not sure how much longer that can keep happening. And actually, in his ITV interview tonight with Paul Brand, Keir Starmer says it will take at least 5 years to fix social care. So this is a potential prime minister coming in who is already saying, I probably can't fix this in my first term. And that's just one of the many, many problems before you get into the economy and need for extra defence funding and all the rest that he's going to have to fix.
I think Whitehall is warning potentially incoming Labour cabinet ministers of some specifics. So not only the junior doctors strike, but I think there's a warning that, you know, if you try and settle any of these things, God knows where they'd find the money. There is also a danger of strike contagion. So beware of the autumn. That's one of the things I think on the list that people are being warned about. And another thing is Thames Water, the viability of this vast piece of national infrastructure. That is quite high, and I understand the sustainability of that organisation, and the question about whether or not that might eventually have to be nationalised. Well, there might not be any eventually about it. And, you know, things are going to have to come in like very, very rapidly. So I think they're being told that you need, in a matter of months, to have worked out budgets for next year. Council budgets by the end of the year have to be set. School budgets by the end of the year have to be set. But even before then, and I really hadn't realised this, Jack, there's got to be a King's speech. We knew that. But quite possibly that King's speech has to come before the summer, which will be a hell of a bun fight working out which bits of the Labour manifesto are going to make it into that manifesto, into that King's speech, and which won't. In other words, what things, what bits of legislation, what laws to pass should take priority, and what should be put on the back burner. These are conversations we have not been having at all, and Labour are going to have to sort of work at speed and at pace to try and sort it out.
No, you're absolutely right. We have been told that the King's speech will happen on July the 17th, which is not very far away at all. That is only 2 or 3 weeks away. It was hard to imagine a new government unveiling an entire, legislative programme in about 3 weeks' time, but apparently that is what's going to happen. Are they ready? I mean, are Labour ready for this? They should be. They've been preparing for it for months in theory, but, it's a different thing once you walk into Whitehall and actually meet the civil servants properly and suddenly right, we need this on the table by the end of the week.
Let me just tell you what I know. I'm surprised there isn't more elsewhere about, Labour's preparations for government. That's one of the things one of the discussions that has not been done extensively through this campaign. Here's what I know. So, they're starting to realise the scale of the challenge. There aren't signs that there'll be a massive Whitehall reorganisation when Keir Starmer comes in. Perhaps changes to the Cabinet Office to put Keir's 5 missions at the heart of it. But beyond that, the existing structure more or less will continue. Maybe some name changes. And broadly speaking, the shadow cabinet, bar some of the extraneous people, will become the cabinet in terms of personnel. And more people are talking about this decision-making quad. So Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves, Angela Rayner and Pat McFadden at the heart of things, making decisions. That's based on something that existed in the coalition era. I was talking to somebody who was in the coalition era and attended the quad and threw their hands up in horror, saying that was a disastrous way to try and make decisions. It didn't really work there. It was a presentational structure, not something that happened. But the big thing that keeps coming, I keep hearing from all sorts of bits of the civil service, bits of the Labour Party, is really all the plans are in Sue Gray's head. It's a bottleneck, and she's obsessed by secrecy, so nothing is being written down. And so there is a fear in the Labour Party that they don't know what their own plans are because Sue isn't telling anyone, and this is causing nerves. And there are 8 days to go before This all has to happen. People don't know whether they've got jobs in 8 days' time. The sort of insistence that plans cannot be spout out in too much detail is now causing jitters.
There is also, of course, the possibility that Labour have some big card up their sleeves that nobody knows about. I'd have no idea whether that's true, but it is worth remembering that in 1997, nobody knew that Gordon Brown was going to make the Bank of England independent when Labour won that landslide victory at the start of May. He just turned up on the Monday morning and did it. Nothing in the manifesto, nothing had leaked to the papers. Whack, probably one of the most significant things they did in the whole period in power. You know, that is the sort of thing that you can do when you've just won a massive landslide. It is not impossible. Labour want to do something big. I have no idea what it would be, but you know, they will have a rare moment if the polls are right and they do win big to initiate dramatic change at the start of the Premiership should they want to. The other thing, Sam, to remember though in those first few days, and maybe a reason why they won't try and do something like that, is Keir Starmer has a load of very important diplomacy to do the minute he becomes Prime Minister. If he wins next week, you know, the new Prime Minister will be, or current Prime Minister will be re-sworn in on the Friday the 5th of July. The following Tuesday they've got to go to Washington almost immediately for a very, very important NATO summit where they will meet Joe Biden and all the other very important Western leaders to talk about the Ukraine war, the threat of China, big strategic issues. And of course the other thing they'll all be talking about is the possibility that Donald Trump is going to be back in the White House come the end of the year. And right on cue, for those insomniacs listening tonight, or those American politics obsessives, you can stay up until 2 a.m. tonight, as in 2 a.m. Friday morning, to watch the first presidential debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. So people waking up tomorrow morning, that will have happened by now, and we'll no doubt be talking about it on the podcast tomorrow. But this is a massive moment, frankly, Sam, for the world, right? This presidential election clearly matters enormously for how things pan out over the next few years. If Donald Trump returns to the White House, the implications for Europe, for Ukraine, and for whoever is Prime Minister will be enormous. You know, you just think about how Theresa May came in as Prime Minister and then not too long after was suddenly confronted with having to deal with President Trump and all the problems and that caused her and the nightmares. Well, that could be coming down the track for Prime Minister Keir Starmer. And I do think we shouldn't underprice just how much a Trump presidency could torpedo anything that Keir Starmer wants to do if indeed he does win next week.
90 minutes, CNN, no notes, live TV debate. Joe Biden's age definitely on the agenda in what will be a physically grueling experience. It's a moment that could determine sliding doors moment really tonight.
Yeah, and I think it'd be interesting. Biden will be pretty much in the Sunak model where he's the incumbent, he's under pressure, and he needs to show the sort of feisty spark, fight, energy thing that Rishi Sunak actually did pretty well last night. We might actually see a similar performance from Biden tonight if he's got it in him.
Is Joe Biden the Rishi Sunak of America? That's the question that we will discuss on the podcast tomorrow from wherever we are.
All right. Have a wonderful day in the Midlands, Sam, and I look forward to seeing you then. Cheers.
See you then.